from all types of landing strips. Having seen the fighter operations, the splendid and immaculate display from this emergency landing facility, next to come is the advanced light helicopter. This indigenously developed helicopter is not only a symbol of technological excellence, but a lifetime during times of crisis.
ALH हेलीकॉप्टर स्वदेश में विकसित केवल तकनीकी उत्कृष्टता का प्रतीक ही नहीं, बल्कि प्राकृतिक आपदाओं के समय एक जीवन रेखा भी है। कल्पना कीजिए उस परिस्थिति की जब बाढ़ या भूकंप के कारण हमारे देश का कोई हिस्सा दुर्गम हो जाता है, जब आपदा में फंसे लोगों की उम्मीद टूटने लगती है, तब यह विमान सबसे पहले सहायता के लिए पहुंचता है। आज हम इसके दोनों स्वरूपों के साक्षी होंगे। शांति काल में यह जीवन रेखा है और युद्ध के समय एक सजग एवं सक्षम योद्धा है।
এতিয়া আমাৰ মাজলৈ আহি আছে ভাৰততে নিৰ্মিত শক্তিশালী হেলিকপ্টাৰ ALH। এই হেলিকপ্টাৰখন কেৱল এটা যন্ত্ৰই নহয়, এই বিপদৰ সময়ত আমাৰ বাবে এক আশাৰ ৰশ্মি।
And now, ladies and gentlemen, shift your gaze towards the far right. Coming in line astern formation are Nakul 1, flown by Wing Commander Amber and Flight Lieutenant Mayuk, and number 2, flown by Wing Commander Himanshu and Flight Lieutenant Janvi. They'll be making a swift landing at this ELF.
अब आपके सामने अदम्य साहसी गरुड़ कमांडोज के साथ तीव्र गति से अग्रसर होता हुआ नकुल फॉर्मेशन।
Watch closely, as you would not want to miss out that in no time at all, our elite special forces, the Garuds, will move on to the objective area. The precision, the speed and lethal accuracy, all in motion. Ladies and gentlemen, be on the lookout and see how swiftly the Garud commandos tread onto the objective area. Their planned and precise moves help them achieve tactical advantage, taking the enemy by surprise.
पायलटों की दक्षता को ध्यान से देखिए। अपने मिशन को सफल करने के पश्चात शत्रु क्षेत्र से सुरक्षित दूरी स्थापित कर चुके हैं और पीछे छोड़ जाते हैं एक ऐसी टुकड़ी जो पूर्णतः सजग और शत्रु की सीमा के भीतर कार्यवाही के लिए तैयार है।
In situations of natural calamities, the Indian Air Force has been at the forefront of nation's humanitarian assistance and disaster relief efforts. In such eventualities, citizens do need immediate medical attention irrespective of availability of the airfield. Look up once again. Here you see call sign Sehdev 1, piloted by Wing Commander Chandan and Squadron Leader Ashwant, and number 2, piloted by Squadron Leader Anil and Flight Lieutenant Shashank, coming in configured as casualty evacuation platform. Be on the lookout as Sehdev sweep in for humanitarian assistance to rescue the citizens, ensuring they receive immediate medical attention while being airlifted to safety. Be on the lookout. In a short moment, you will see how this cabin, designed for rapid reconfiguration, turns into an airborne ICU, providing immediate medical care. What you're experiencing is not just an air display, it is the aerial articulation of a rising India. This indigenous marvel stands as a testament to India's vision of Atmanirbhar Bharat. And with this, we come to the end of today's flying display and operationalization of the first emergency landing facility of the Northeast India here at Moran. We now prepare to bid farewell to our Honorable Prime Minister, Shri Narendra Modi ji. He is now departing from this venue, carrying with him pride and aspirations of the nation. His presence here today has further strengthened our resolve towards progress, security and self-reliance.
हमारे माननीय प्रधानमंत्री श्री नरेंद्र मोदी जी का कुशल नेतृत्व आज भारत को नई ऊर्जा, आत्मविश्वास और नई दिशा की तरफ ले जा रहा है। माननीय प्रधानमंत्री एक दूरदर्शी मार्गदर्शक के रूप में राष्ट्र को नई सोच और नई दिशा प्रदान कर रहे हैं। उनके नेतृत्व में सड़कों, रेल मार्गों, हवाई
तो डिब्रूगढ़
All right, so let's just, in a sense, summarize what exactly it is that we are looking at over here. Just a few moments back, the Prime Minister was in Moran in Assam at a part of the National Highway 2, I believe, where he landed in a C-130J aircraft. That's a tactical transport of the Indian Air Force. And then we saw an air display. The image on the bottom left is of the Prime Minister's plane landing. The image above that, on the top left, is of the brief air display that took place. These fighters were armed. That's fairly unusual in displays, but it certainly does send a signal of strength of the Indian Air Force. That's a Sukhoi 30 on the top with 2 R-27 missiles and 2 R-73 missiles. The plane beneath it on the left is that C-130 that the Prime Minister landed in. On the top right, the Rafale aircraft, which was also part of the display. So it was a short, sharp sort of presentation over there. We're joined by Air Vice Marshal Arjun Subramaniam at this stage. Air Marshal Sanjeev Kapoor joins us as well, as does Dr. Brahma Charani. Thank you, gentlemen, very much for being with us. Air Vice Marshal Subramaniam, interesting display. I thought it is particularly interesting that we had armed aircraft in a particular part of our country, you know, which is very, very strategically sensitive, geographically sensitive. What was being conveyed over there?
Okay. Hi, Vishnu and morning viewers. So for me, it was a demonstration of intent, capability, and resolve. And let me put these three aspects in a strategic context. A few years ago, say about a decade ago, we were constantly lamenting that the Chinese infrastructure build-up across the rest of Arunachal Pradesh was creating a tremendous asymmetry with the Indian armed forces, and the Indian armed forces would find it difficult to match the Chinese for that kind of infrastructure buildup. And for a long time, I've been writing that I think it would be a folly to try and match the Chinese inch for inch on the ground, because they have a terrain advantage on that side for creation of infrastructure.
Yeah.
Now, infrastructure creation on our side in the RALP is a little difficult. And this demonstration of air power intent is a solid means of bridging that asymmetry that the Chinese have enjoyed for long in the rest of Arunachal Pradesh. The other thing that you must see this in context is that don't forget that apart from the emergency landing ground that we've just witnessed, a capability, we have almost 7 ALGs that are fully operational in this area, running from Pasighat to Vijayanagar to Machuka along and the whole stretch. So I think what we've created is that we've created a multi-layered defensive capability that can also now be leveraged for offensive operations, since we've completely integrated the full Monty as far as air power capability is concerned. So don't forget that now the Chinese will think twice before planning any ambitious offensive operations in the rest of Arunachal Pradesh, because you have adequate air power capability that will be available to be employed both in offensive and defensive operations.
Air Marshal Kapoor, it's not easy to necessarily operate off these of a strip like this. We do something called hot refueling as well in order for these aircraft to be refueled while the engines are still on, so that they can be utilized immediately, particularly in the case of a context. For the benefit of our viewers, can you tell us why it's a bit of a challenge?
Good morning to you, your viewers and the fellow panelists. Hot refueling provisions do exist on all these emergency landing strips. Not only refueling, we have means for a kind of a storage spaces where the weapons and the ammunition could also be kept. There are charging points around where we could have the supply for nitrogen, oxygen, and other things going. Not only that, we have the provision for repair and salvage in case of any requirement. So these are catered for when we operationalize any of these highway strips. Now, it depends from area to area, state to state, highway to highway. And 3-4 agencies are involved in this. One being the National Highway Authority, the state government, the local authorities, the district administration, and of course, the Indian Air Force, which is an interface of all these things. Hot refueling provisions do exist. So the nearest IOC point or any fuel agency is not at that stage in a position like a hydrant refueling kind of a thing which exists in our bases. But typically Bowser kind of a refueling provisions do exist along these highways. A few I am aware. I am not particularly aware of this one.
Dr. Chilani, the sensitivity of this particular area, and also the fact that we've been doing this now in other parts of our country as well, setting up these strips, it indicates an evolution in the thinking of the Air Force, to look at potential scenarios. Would you agree?
I agree with you, Vishnu. Today's event is rich with both tactical significance and political symbolism. The strategic significance has been underlined by inaugurating the Northeast's first emergency landing facility in proximity to the China border. It provides an alternative runway for the Indian Air Force if nearby air bases like Chabua or Tezpur are targeted or rendered unusable during a conflict. It also underscores India's development of dual-use infrastructure. And as you rightly point out, that this project is part of a broader national strategy to integrate civilian highways with military requirements. And this particular strip can support heavy transport aircraft up to 74 tons and frontline fighter jets. But this runway also can be used for disaster response. We should not forget that Assam is prone to recurrent flooding and other natural disasters. So beyond combat, the ELF serves as a hub for humanitarian assistance and disaster relief. But I think there is also the public messaging part we should not forget. The Prime Minister's choice to be on board the landing aircraft rather than just cutting a ribbon is a deliberate piece of political communication. First, he's highlighting Viksit Bharat in the sense that the landing serves as visual proof of high quality infrastructure. It messages that Indian roads are no longer just for cars, but are engineered for military purposes too. They are in standards world class. Second, signaling is about national security being coming first. By landing near the sensitive China border, the government is signaling strategic resolve. It communicates to both domestic voters and international observers that India is aggressively modernizing its border defense capabilities as part of military modernization. And I think that the third message, which is very important and focused on the focus on the Northeast, as you know, traditionally the Northeast has been seen as a neglected periphery. Today, the government is trying
Dr.
to
Chilani, just
frame the
hold on for a
Northeast.
second. We've got the Prime Minister over here with the Chief of Air Staff, Air Chief Marshal A.P. Singh. I noticed one of the plaques that he was looking at was the significance of Moran. This is a bird's eye view which is provided to him. Moran, of course, is the location where this has all taken place. And a map showing the entire area, which is what we brought our viewers earlier on. Again, quite clearly meant to show the location of the area and the strategic significance of the area that was being showed. This is the map that I'm talking about over here. Let's see if we can listen into if you have any sound on this, do we? All right, we don't have audio over here, but this is an explanation for the Prime Minister on why this location is particularly important, done by the Air Force Chief. Again, significance of the Moran facility, the emergency landing facility, ELF as it's known, its location, a zoom in over there, and we've got these images as well. We'll try and show that to you. But what the Prime Minister also did witness was quite interesting. It was a very brief air display by armed aircraft. This is something that China will certainly have noticed. Usually for air displays across the country, the Indian Air Force doesn't operate aircraft with air-to-air or air-to-ground munitions, slung under the wings. But it was done on this particular occasion. It was done a couple of months back in Assam as well. So I think the message is that the Indian Air Force is fully ready, to deal with any situation which does emerge. Of course, at the same time, it is important to note that the scenario with China is improving. Diplomatic relations have improved somewhat. But I think the state of readiness of the Indian Air Force does need to remain on very, very high. It is very, very high, quite obviously. That's why you're actually showcasing a lot of this. On the top left of your screen is a Rafale which is taking off. That was one of the planes which participated in the brief display. There were helicopters as well. Those are Dhruv advanced light helicopters of the Indian Air Force on the top right. On the bottom left, very interesting, Mirage 2000s, 3 Mirage 2000s of the Indian Air Force, one of them pulling up, in fact, 2 of them pulling up for a particular maneuver. A huge strategic signal by the Prime Minister who was there. It didn't take very much time, but a lot was conveyed over there. Top left is of the Prime Minister's plane having landed in that emergency landing facility. It was on a C-130 Hercules. On the top right of your screen, you saw the helicopter was an advanced light helicopter Dhruv that you see landing over there. So there's a lot which has actually taken place over the last couple of hours. It all began shortly after 10:30 this morning when the Prime Minister landed. And the image on the right-hand side is actually of the Hercules of the Prime Minister, a shot from inside. So let's just go back to Air Marshal Kapoor. Sir, I interrupted you. Please go ahead with what you were saying.
Just to amplify what Mr. Chalani just said, see the airfields in Tibet, be it Lunze, be it Negechi, Shannon, Hoping, Pangta, Konka, these airfields which have come up are typically prepared to take on any exigency in case they decide to create any adventure in this area. And rightly pointed out the ALGs by Air Marshal Subramaniam, that the ALGs in this area have also started. So at Pasighat, we are having C-17s landing. The strip which we have just inaugurated is a capability of having a C-17 landing here. So in case of any exigency or in case of any requirement, these aeroplanes could be fast inducted into this area, brought in with the requisite supplies, or for evacuation or for reinforcement, both for the ground forces also. You could have, the BMPs, your howitzers, the guns, along with Chinooks and C-17 landings on this airstrip.
Yep.
And we are ready within no time to take on any exigency if so arises. So in my implication, these have far more strategic implications than the visuals. And also a very right observation by you, wherein this Republic Day, we did see the aeroplanes flying with weapons strapped onto this. So there is a posturing by the people to indicate.
Kapoor, the time-honored principle of the Indian Air Force is that all of these missiles have a certain life, and therefore you don't want to expose the airframe to stresses, which is why we keep them for war and exercises, right? But if you, unlike, let's say, the US Air Force, which showcases missiles quite frequently, but today I saw R-27, R-73 and Mika missiles on these aircraft. That's a change. We would often, as aviation enthusiasts, say, why does the Air Force not have more missiles slung under their planes? But that seems to be changing. It's happened on a couple of occasions, including recently in Assam as well, where they showcased the BrahMos, the Rampage, the Astra missile as well. So there's a lot of an effort at signaling. Would you agree, Air Marshal Kapoor? And I'll have Air Marshal Subramaniam in on this point as well.
I agree with you, and we are having Vai Shakti in a couple of weeks from now.
Yes.
So this usage of weapons for finishing off their life also is one of the ways is to demonstrate this capability, give training to the pilots, and showcase to the enemy our prowess.
Air Marshal Subramaniam, your thoughts?
Yeah. So I think this is a significant departure from earlier policies, wherein I think it's not only the IAF, but I think the country at large is resorting to a little more assertive signaling when it comes to national security issues. But I also want to take you back to a point you made about the use of dual-use strategies. So I think what's happening here with China is that while on the one hand, there seems to be some amount of rapprochement, or I would say some amount of easing of tensions on the economic and diplomatic front, but I think we have reconciled to the fact that as long as we have contested boundaries and frontiers, there has to be a dual strategy when it comes to posturing vis-a-vis China, and that dual strategy has to include a certain amount of assertive posturing on the military and the infrastructure front. Now, there's one more point I want to make about this entire buildup of capability in the Northeast. You must remember that over the last decade or so, we've inducted Sukhoi 30s, we've inducted Rafales into the Northeast, we've got C-130s, ALGs configured for C-17, and you don't forget that you've got a strike corps in the Northeast. And then you have this concept of the integrated battle groups, which is emerging in the Indian Army. And I think the concept of a strike corps and integrated battle groups without effective sort of fusing in of air power, both offensive and defensive, is really a non-starter. And therefore, I think this is a right move to get the Indian Air Force whole hog into the military calculus in the Northeast, so that we build up effective joint capability in the years ahead.
All right. All important points. Dr. Chilani, anything else that you'd like to add to this on the significance of this? And, in as much as we talk about, the military aspects, that the humanitarian aid is also very important. And indeed, Burma, Myanmar, which, is also a security challenge for us. To have facilities like this, looking into Myanmar as well is significant.
When Prime Minister Modi travels anywhere, whether within the country or overseas, he tries to accomplish 2 or 3 missions. And this particular event today is part of broader signaling. Let's not forget about the timing. Assam is heading towards assembly elections very soon. And in fact, today marks the opening day of Modi's campaigning in Assam. And also the use of the indigenous Tejas fighter in the accompanying air show reinforced the Atmanirbhar Bharat message. But I think the strategic significance of this demonstration and the fact that India is currently building a network of 28 emergency landing facilities across the country, and these facilities are being built not just near international borders, but also in the coastal areas. For example, from Andhra Pradesh to Tamil Nadu, such emergency landing facilities are coming up. In Andhra Pradesh, 3 alone are being built in the coastal regions. No less important are the technical details.
Sure.
These aren't just flat roads. They're constructed to handle the high impact force of top-of-the-line fighter jets. They'll be able to take the heat of fighter jets afterburners. They also feature dedicated parking slots, aprons, and basic air traffic control infrastructure. So the dual infrastructure element that these facilities underscore is very important in terms of signaling to the adversary.
All right. Well, what we're going to do, and gentlemen, stay with us. We're going to take a short break at this stage. The images on your screen are from Moran in Assam, where there's an emergency landing facility of the Indian Air Force, which has been inaugurated by the Prime Minister, who landed there in a C-130J Hercules aircraft.